So I think it's a very well laid out policy by the government. There are, I think, some 300 business activities that are identified, and for each service type, you need to take a trade license. And typically, trade licenses carry about 3 activities. You can carry on 3 business activities on a trade license. So for us, if, for example, we were running a fitness center, and we were also running a food business. So food needed a different license,
Right.
and fitness was a different license. Typically what happens is you get a general trading license and your core business activity license. So that's how you would set it up, and the sales then attributes to the center, etc. But one important thing for the fitness business is every fitness center is a retail store. So it's a branch of your main LLC company that you set up. So you need to have one registered LLC, which is your headquarters, and you get allocated X number of visas for that. And then every time you add a new store or a new center, you have to have a sub license for a trade license for that as well.
Okay, for every branch.
For every branch, and then your number of visa allocations depends on the number of branches you have.
Welcome to another episode of Be Your Own Boss. On this show, we've heard stories of people who have successfully built their businesses, people who have taken that step and started their own journey, of the entrepreneurial journey. And we've also seen stories where people have started their businesses and things didn't work. And we learn from them, from these stories, why things didn't work and what is being done right now to build that runway to take off again. We have one such story here today. Our guest this week is Dharmendra Mehta, popularly known among his friends as Dharam. And Dharam's story is similar to Kabul's story. If you've seen the Kabul story on the Be Your Own Boss podcast, if you haven't, just check it out. The Kabul story is a very, very interesting story on the show, where Abdullah Gurukul was, this is the story of Abdullah Gurukul, where he started his business. It didn't work. And then how he faced those challenges, and then how he is building up his runway again. And we have one such similar story here. Dharam, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Sachin. I am deeply inspired by your story and what you're doing to build this community around being a boss. Well, I'm technically not a boss today myself, but it's great to be here. And thank you very much for finding this gem of a place. Doing a Sunrise podcast is one of the best feelings I've had so far. So thank you for setting this up. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, absolutely. And talking of the place, if you guys can guess the place, comment below and let us know where we are sitting right now. So, Dharam, let's start with your story right from the beginning. So tell us about your parents, your childhood, your siblings.
Right, Sachin. So I was born in a very traditional defense family. My father was a 3rd generation soldier. My grandfather had the distinction of serving in both World War I and World War II.
Oh, wow.
And my father also had a meritorious service record. My mom was a housemaker. And I have 2 siblings, 2 elder sisters. And so I was the youngest, and I'm still treated as the youngest in the family. So I have privileges of being the baby of the family. And to date, my sisters treat me like I'm still a school-going kid. And I'm very thankful and grateful for that.
Yeah.
So growing up days was all in Mumbai. My father was very clear that he wanted us to get a stable education environment. So he made sure we went to good schools, convents, and colleges. So I went to St. Xavier's in Mumbai to do my schooling. Then I went to Khalsa College.
Yeah.
I studied economics, graduated. And in my growing up days, I was an average student. I was in a class of 60, probably around 20, 25 ranked. But I got an all-rounded exposure to, team sports, to dramatics, elocution competitions, debates. So it was a well-rounded childhood, right? So that gave me a lot of, and when I look back now, I think that was a privileged childhood to be living in Mumbai in the 1980s and growing up.
Yeah.
I think while we didn't have access to a lot of things that we would desire for probably, because we were a middle-class family, but I think that well-rounded education really helped.
And Mumbai makes you very street smart, right?
It
This
does.
is,
It does.
it's,
And
it's a beautiful
one of the
place.
things that my father always said was it is the responsibility of parents to groom their children.
Yeah.
So one part is education, but what is etiquette for you? How do you behave when you meet people? So, and they always emphasized on these things, right? So that again was a big, big leap that helped me in my career, in my growing up days. And I think once I got out of the graduation cycle, is when I got into my post-graduation, is when I really became serious about things. That's when I topped the university and, in my management course. So that's when things started really changing for me. I became very serious with career, profession, etc. And that's how.
And growing up, did you have aspirations that one day you want to become an entrepreneur or start your own business? Did you have that?
Honestly, no.
Nothing.
Because we came from a family of service people, I thought it was very natural for people to grow up and join the forces.
Right.
I didn't make a grade, and that's when Plan B started.
Okay.
And I think that's how it has kind of been.
So you also were planning to join the defense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was very natural, but probably God had other plans. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. And so once you finished your master's, you did your master's in, that's MBA, right?
Yes,
You
in
did
foreign
your-
trade management,
Right.
from Mumbai University.
Okay. And then what was your next step then? Did you
So then I was recruited by Raymond, and I joined Raymond as a management trainee.
Right.
So textile company, I was part of the exports team. And so this was mid 90s, right? When people were looking at, India was just opening up, the economy was opening up, and international trade was a great new space to be in.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into that side of things. I studied foreign trade, went to Raymond, was there for almost 8-9 years. And that is where my grooming happened on the professional side of things. I was very fortunate to have worked with a gentleman by the name of Mr. V.K. Bakshi. He's my mentor to date, and I look up to him for advice on every single thing, even on the personal side of things. And that's where I realized that is the first time I actually worked with a boss.
Yeah.
And what it meant. So while it was a large organization, 75-year-old company with, so many SOPs in place, but when you are your own boss within that structure, how do you operate? And for us, Mr. Bakshi was the end of it all. We were not working for any other industrialist. He was the industrialist for us, right? Because for us, the work started with him and ended with him, right? So that's where, and he took a lot of personal interest in our personal growth.
Right.
Of, when we travel. So I traveled to about 60 countries, did business development, selling fabrics, apparel. We set up a retail network in the Middle East. So doing all of that, but with the amount of ownership that he exhibited, we never felt that it was not his company. We always thought he was the owner of the company. And that's where, even from a professional mindset perspective, it has always set in saying the simple things that make you feel like the owner of the company, and not just be a part of the entire system, but you also have something to contribute at all levels. And that's where it all started.
Yeah. And that's, taking ownership of what you do, even whether you're part of a big organization or small, or you've just started your own company, taking ownership of what's within your span of control, and I
think that's what creates the most impact.
Absolutely.
And that has been an integral part of my values at work. And that's really helped me grow. So I worked with Raymond for about 7-8 years, moved. Then India was again liberalizing in another way. Retail was becoming very big, and I had ambitions of moving away from exports because it was a highly demanding job. You were traveling almost 3 weeks every month. And so it just became, it came to a point where you're thinking, what's next? And that's when retail was really booming. And I was also in my role working with a lot of international brands who were big retailers, Macy's and the sort, and Marks and Spencer, which gave me a lot of insights into how retail really works. So that got me interested in saying, if this is going to be a boom in India now, then it's a good career choice. If I had to move away from exports, then retail is a good place to go. I was fortunate again to get a break with Future Group, worked with malls called Central. So managed front-end operations for them in Bangalore and Gurgaon. Then moved to another concept within the group called Brand Factory, which is a brands for less concept. Headed category for them back in Bangalore for about 2.5 years. And that's when the journey again began with online, right? So we wanted to take Brand Factory online and started evaluating how online works, etc. Got deeply interested, and that's when Flipkart came up with an opportunity saying, we are launching the fashion business and we're looking for people to join us. And that's how I moved to Flipkart. And my entire journey within the last decade with the digital business is largely with Flipkart, and I owe a lot to the organization for the amount of opportunities we got, because it was in a growing state. We were almost growing every 6-12 months by leaps and bounds. But that also meant folks with, the right attitude and mindset were able to also contribute faster. We're growing very fast within the organization. So I grew to being, so I started off as head of clothing when we launched fashion, then moved to head marketplace. Then I moved to being chief of staff for a short while, to then managing one part of a logistics business. And that gave me an all-rounded, understanding of how e-commerce works as a business, how digitization really solves problems at scale. And that really got me into thinking. It changed my perspective to life as well, because this was a very high performance culture. And we all believed in the marine culture, right? Where, like the US Marines, you demand the best out of your buddies because it's a life and death situation. So got into the habit of reading there, because a lot of our peers and seniors got us to, read a lot. They shared their reading list, and that's become a good habit that I've kind of inculcated. Come 2018, I had an opportunity to move to Dubai, and I've been here since. So I came to Dubai with a startup called Mum's World, which is a mother-baby website. I joined them as CEO. And somewhere in the first year of the journey itself, I think we got into this conversation with the founders of CureFit, saying they were looking at moving to an international market. And Dubai seemed the first choice. And that's when my entrepreneurial journey really started. So while I was padded, soft cushioned into it, because the investments were coming from CureFit, but it was an entrepreneurial role, and I was the founder of the international business, right? So that's how it started. We did that until COVID stopped everything for us, I think, in our tracks. So, and we'll talk more in detail about this, because that's the relevant part of the conversation. And post-COVID, after having successfully closed down that business, which was an experience I did not vouch for, but yes, I did spend 6 months shutting down an entire business that we just started.
That's also an important part. Like, when shutting down a business, it's not easy. It takes time to. So we might just think that it doesn't work, then let's just leave. No, it doesn't happen like that.
Absolutely. And I think that's where that's made me a more mature human being. So when you look at it, COVID happened to the whole world. You're fortunate for what you got, and you kind of managed to stay away from personal harm and stuff. But on the other side of it, it's made me much more wiser. My interaction with people is so much more different. One of the challenges always has been that from 1997 to 2020, my career has been on a growth path, right? Trajectory. It's the first time that you hit a roadblock, which is taking you into a deep dive situation. So when we were building the business, it's such a positive feeling. People want to come with you, and there were people, and at that time you have this, you're kind of a rising star, and you kind of at times also tend to take things not so seriously. But when you're going down, there's nobody with you. So they say it's alone at the top, but trust me, when you're diving down, it's even lonelier. Your shadow also leaves you. So it is a difficult task, but I think all said and done, it's an experience, and it's, as long as you use it in the right way to channelize your energies further. Today I'm much more wiser. Today I do take decisions not based on a lot of things that I would say I could take a higher risk on. I now evaluate risk far deeper, but at the same time, I think it's about moving on as well. So once you've got all of that together, then I think next steps is what mattered. And that's where I thought, that's where I thought it was important for me to get into a stable environment and start building something again. I was again fortunate to start working with Lal's Group, which is one of the oldest retailers in the region. Our founder, Mr. Lal, is very, very much into the business himself, and his son, Mr. Jayant, is leading the modernization of the organization, right? So that's where digital business was not existing at that point of time, and that's how a role was created for me to join. And then that's how the journey has been. So over the last 2.5 years, I've been helping the group build the e-commerce business.
Wow. So let's talk about the part where when you moved to Dubai with Mum's World, and then you got into your entrepreneurial journey, right? So tell us more about that. Like, how did you get that idea, and then the foreign investment that came in?
Right. So I think when I came to Dubai, I realized that it's very glamorous from the outside, but when you're coming to work in, it is a very rigorous space. It is highly competitive, but at the same time, it has this virtue of multinational environment, and you get really exposed to how things work. In that role, when I started actually operationalizing our requirements, of the warehousing being set up, last mile logistics being set up, and I started traveling across the city, I realized there is so many gaps that we can fill in from the right kind of brands and products coming into the region. And my initial thought was, because I spent a lot of time in the fashion business and then in the multi-brand, multi-category,
And internationally.
yeah. And so I understood how electronics is sold differently from how fashion is sold to how groceries need to be sold, and that became so I could fit into any role and ensure all kinds of businesses can become successful. But I thought that was an opportunity that I wanted to kind of utilize and say, is there potential of bringing an Indian brand to the region and helping it expand? And that's where the conversation started. And we said, one-on-one with Ankit Nagori, who's the co-founder at CureFit. He was my boss at Flipkart. And we spoke, and, we said, I'm interested deeply in, starting something up. And I think that bringing brands to the region is still an opportunity. While there is a lot of that work happening, but I'd like to start down that journey.
Right.
And 2 weeks later, we spoke, and he said, if you want to do it, why don't we do it together? So we become your investors and you start. And that's how the whole journey started. And the first 3, 4, 5 months was all about finding out what's happening in the market, what's competition like, who are the people you'll work with. So that's where my entrepreneurial journey started, and it taught me that there is a glamorized side of being your own boss, but it's a very, very difficult task. And especially being the first person in the market, meeting folks, understanding what can go wrong with your business, and kind of trying to keep yourself in a way keep yourself away from any of these problems that occur, right? So,
So, and in your collaboration with CureFit, you decided that you're going to start it here. So was there any discussion about the name or how you want to launch it? Did you register the company here on your own by your
yes, so it was registered here. It was not registered in my name because it was a company. So it was, but I was the signatory on all the paperwork.
Got it.
And so the entire understanding of it, right? So the groundwork of what does it take to start a company? You need to have a local partner. What's the difference between being on a free zone? Does your trade license permit you to do certain kind of activities or not? So understanding all of those, who is the right partner to go with? So we made those decisions based on, did a lot of market research, understood what works. Is it easier to go with a single person as your partner, or do you want to take a corporate board that works with you? So made those choices, and we said it's better to go with a company that kind of, de-risks you completely and becomes more like a silent partner in the relationship. And you have complete control on your daily operations. But at the same time, if something goes wrong, they're always there to back you up. So that's why we found a great partnership with a company. We were able to, so there were these days when I would ping them at 5 a.m. and they would respond to me saying, and then that became, when you share values, it becomes easier to work with those people. And that's where we then, started collaborating. And it was a great story because CureFit in India was like 300 fitness centers and growing. And when you came here and you shared those numbers, people didn't believe you. So when we took them back, showed them, this is what we are building and this is how it's going to be, they came back so much more excited. And that was, of course, there was a power of the brand that I was working on, that we were bringing to the region, and that gave me a lot more strength. Saying, we're not starting just from scratch, but there's already something that works. It's met. Its due diligence is done. And then it's a safer
there's
bet.
Proof of concept.
There's proof of concept.
And there is and when you were registering your company here and with CureFit and setting up things here, what were the you mentioned about you make different you make choices based on how you want to register your company for this one. So and I'm asking this on behalf of the listeners who would like to start their business in let's say in this particular industry. Okay, and if their market is all of UAE, they want to target all of UAE. Okay, what's the right kind of setup, or what's the right kind of company to register for?
So I think it's a very well laid out policy by the government. It's there are, I think, some 300 business activities that are identified, and for each identity and for each service type, you need to take a trade license. And typically, trade licenses carry about 3 activities. You can carry on 3 business activities on a trade license. So for us, if, for example, we were running a fitness center, and we were also running a food business, and because we had cafes within the fitness center, plus we were doing a proof of concept for quick delivery of food, right? Plus, so food needed a different license,
right?
And fitness was a different license. So that's how you kind of came up with it. It's very well defined. You can.
And what about the sale within, like in fitness centers, you have a little bit of apparels and a little bit of accessory sales that happens. So does that require is that considered as a separate activity as well?
Yes, it is. So you need to then register that as a separate activity.
Right.
And so basically, typically what happens is you get a general trading license and your core business activity license. So that's how you would set it up, and the sales then attributes to the center, etc. But one important thing for the fitness business is every fitness center is a retail store. So it's a branch of your main LLC company that you set up. So you need to have one registered LLC, which is your headquarters, and you get allocated X number of visas for that. And then every time you add a new store or a new center, you have to have a sub license for a trade license for that as well.
Okay, for every branch.
For every branch, and then your number of visa allocations depends on the number of branches you have.
Got it. And what's the government authority like? What's that one government department that one can go to get information about all this?
From a setup perspective, I think DED. So you can go to Dubai Economic Department. You get all the information there. There are a lot of DED cafes spread across Dubai, and very easy access. I think the ease of doing business, it's not just on paper, but I think it really exists. Going to those places, getting information is very easy. A lot of it is online already, and as long as your paperwork is clear, things are very, very smooth.
So the point is, in Dubai, if you want to start a business, the first thing to do is be very clear about the activities that you're going to do under your business, and based on that, you go to DED and they'll guide you on the right kind of trade licenses to take. And if you plan to have multiple branches, then each branch would also need a sub license.
That's right. That's right.
And let's talk about the recruitment process. How was that for you when you started here in Dubai?
I think that was the game-changing thing for me, because we were in this entire process saying, if you want to build a successful company, then it's very important for you to work with top talent. And I interviewed about 300 people and we recruited 12.
Wow.
So it was, you wanted the top. So, and the other thing was, you have to fit the role and the person together. And we were very clear that we'll not compromise on anybody who does not meet, aptitude, attitude analysis. And we were very, very strict with, we never made a compromise on only the right candidate. So until the right candidate came, I would hold fort for that role, right? So if till the time we did not get the right quality specialist, I would hold quality control as my personal objective, along with what else was happening. Till the time we didn't find the right marketing person, I would hold marketing, the fort on marketing, finance, all of it.
Yeah.
And then as slowly we started getting more people in, I started giving up those activities to the right people, because they were more, I could understand the width of it, but I could not deeply solve those problems.
Yeah.
And then once we got a specialist, then we handed over the role to those people.
So as an entrepreneur, you have you kind of have that T model of knowledge. You have the wide range of you know a wide range of things, and then you have deep knowledge about one or two things. But then for the others, you need to find the right people who have the depth of knowledge in that category.
Yes, and that is one place where I've learned over a period of time, probably the hard way as well. You should never compromise on talent. Get the right person for the right role, and they will deliver. I think, and then once you have people who are satisfied with their own work, because that's their expertise, then they contribute so much more to the team. Right? And that's a very, very important task. I think a lot of times we tend to, say we compromise on the kind of talent we hire, but in the long run, it doesn't help you.
So your approach while recruiting was to find the people who would love to do this kind of job and find job satisfaction in that, because that it matches their skill sets and
yes, exactly. And I think there is a lot of smart young kids who come out of college with bright ideas, and they're just looking for this right opportunity. And if you're able to kind of help them with it, it works both ways. So they bring a lot of new, fresh ideas. They lack in experience, but you make up by working with them very closely. But at the same time, you also need a mix of slightly experienced people who can take some load off your shoulders, right?
So you made sure that in your in your recruitment process, you made sure that you have the different kind of diversity and inclusion, right? So different age groups, different ethnicities, and so you bring in the right mix of people with the right talents. That's tough, by the way, right?
Yes, it is. It is. I think finding the right people is very, very difficult as a task as well. But the good part of it is when you have a very transparent approach to things, then it becomes easier. In your assessment of people, when you ask them more, like we speak, like you say, and this is something that even you believe in, right? Where you know the story of the person. The person becomes your friend.
Absolutely.
And then it's easier to work. And that's where the recruitment process also such that you actually go through layers, understand people better, and then get into a working relationship.
Got it. And let's talk about the time when things got tough, when COVID hit, right? So how did things change at that time?
I think it was just so sudden. While we all thought that we knew that nobody was ready for it. And every day was a different conversation, right? So 3 months before, sometime in November 2019, we were talking about, expansion plans to Saudi. We had launched about 10 centers in Dubai. We were looking at expanding to Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, and then expanding to the GCC. And, we made trips to understand the market, etc. And suddenly that conversation moved to, it's not working. It's not going to work because we're just going to shut down now. And there was panic. So, from conversation saying, it's okay, don't worry. It's a temporary shutdown to actually lockdown. And then going through that phase, every morning you woke up thinking it's going to get better, and then it only became worse by the end of the day. Those conversations were very difficult. The decision of it's highly debated internally. But then we were clear that, whatever had not met product market fit were projects that we would close and actually invest in projects where there was still more, chances of or opportunity to grow, and which is fair. And from a real burn perspective, there was a lot of exposure in the Dubai business because we had long-term leases with landlords. We had, and this was all said and done. This was outside of the core country of operation, right? So. It was from start to end. It was a 19-month operation. But at the same time, we had almost close to 100 people working with us, trainers, center managers, salespeople. That journey was difficult, but then again, what helped was from the beginning, we were very transparent with people on how are things going, what's going to happen, what are your career progression paths,
Yeah.
and what could be possible failure points.
Yeah.
And that's where we always spoke about saying, if it does not meet these targets, then we will not be able to grow. So it was always known to this team.
Yeah.
They were aware of it, but of course, nobody was prepared for 2020. And that one conversation, one fine morning saying, let's, close it down.
Yeah.
And then relaying that in a lockdown situation to people sitting at home.
Yeah.
Communicating to them, and then identifying there are some people who'll probably need to be with you for slightly longer because they have specific roles to complete, versus a lot of the other people who would just have to kind of,
Yeah.
go home.
You have to
But
let them go. Yeah.
but at the same time, we did our best to make sure that we covered them for as long as possible from a monetary perspective, from visa perspective, and eventually then we had to go back to our partners, right, and tell them that we are closing down.
Yeah.
I think one of our biggest allies in that time was there's a mall called Palm Strip in La Mer, and the landlords are from the royal family. Day one of COVID, they sent us an email saying, "Don't worry, there's lockdown. We will not charge you rent for the next 45 days.
Wow.
We'll talk about it once things reopen." And even when we decided to close down, they just told us, prove to us that you're shutting down your business
Right.
completely,
Yeah.
and we will not charge you any exit clauses, etc. So it was very, very kind of them.
Yeah.
But with most others, which are private businesses, we really struggled. There were a lot of helpful people, but everything around you was collapsing.
Yeah.
So I realized I was sitting at a landlord's office and trying to push my case, saying, I need to exit. Can you help me out? She said, there are 100 other people like you who are sitting here.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it was those moments of realizing the scale of that mammoth destruction that is happening.
Yeah.
And at that point of time, there was this entire scare about what's going to happen to Dubai, and people would say it's going to take much longer to recover, but look
Yeah.
at the fantastic recovery and
Absolutely.
how it's
Yeah.
really scaled up from there.
Yeah. I mean, the worry was everywhere because nobody knew how long this is going to last. And so there was a lot of anxiety. And because of that, then lots of decisions were made. Let's talk about the process of shutting down a business and the costs that are involved in it, right? So if you were to quantify that cost, considering the amount of, for example, like hypothetically, let's just take, let's not get into actual numbers here.
Sure.
But if we like the amount that is required to start a business versus the amount that is required to close a business, what's that proportion like?
I think it's a very good question. If you split the cost of starting a business between capex and operational expenses, I think you'd probably recover your capex, depending on the business that you're in, anywhere between 3 to 7 years. But the cost of closing that business is when the capex really hits you hard, because and that's what happened with us. We invested in opening centers, and our capex investments went in completely, but operational efficiencies had not yet built in. So most of the centers opened in the second half of 2019, and in the first half of 2020 you had to close them, right? So you never got a chance to recover anything out of your capex for sure, and you also had spent money on operationally scaling up your business, right? So you were making investments on marketing, on people, on training, etc. So that's where it kind of becomes disproportionate. But if you look at it from an overall perspective, your capex is completely gone. Plus you have exposures to long-term partnerships, right? So you have rentals to pay where you are in, and that's where these contracts become really crucial to go through in detail, understand what it means, what your exit clauses are, how fair are those. So there are times when they become like, because it's also dependent on the market situation. At times you get one-sided clauses, and you may want to think that it's a difficult one right now, but in the long run it may work for you. And sometimes it may be a very easy clause at that point of time, but it becomes a challenge to come out of it. So I think when we were closing down, we saw our exposure was to customers.
Right.
because they had membership plans and you had to refund them.
Right.
There were landlords who needed to be paid extended rental terms beyond your operational days. And there was staff for whom you had to kind of cover them for extended periods. Be
Right.
fair with them, right?
Yeah.
So those were the associated costs directly. However, there is a lot of closing fees, etc., which you need to also then pay. We chose the voluntary liquidation route, which is where we went and advised the government that we are no longer in a position to run the business and therefore we are shutting down. Within that, you have to actually prove that you've paid out to all your stakeholders, whoever had to be. So employees, landlords, any suppliers.
Yeah.
You have to kind of pay them, get their confirmations over contracts or emails,
Yeah.
and then submit all of that paperwork to the government, and then it goes through a closure process.
Got it. So one important part that I want to reiterate what you just said is that the exit clauses are important. So before getting into a contract, one must be very careful about the kind of exit clauses that are mentioned in the contract and make sure that it's fair.
Yes.
There is always there will always be some exit expenses involved here, like exit costs, exit fees, penalties involved. But just make sure that it's not outrageous.
Yes, it has to be. And I think there your due diligence and the amount of time you spend on each of those is very, very important.
Yeah. So be careful getting into a contract. And I want to kind of ask you, like, for the listeners, for the audience, what would be your advice, considering all the learnings that you've had in your entire journey, right? What would be your advice for the people who are just getting started or want to get started in their entrepreneurial journey right now?
I think few points. One is very important to understand what is the problem you're solving, because I keep saying this, we are in the 21st century. Most problems in the world have been solved. So there's nothing new that you're going to bring in. However, if you understand properly what differentiated offering are you bringing to a consumer, then you need to also be able to translate it in a single sentence to the buyer of your services or goods.
Right.
So it's very important to have that written down, completely visualized and communicated as often as possible. Second, I think it's important to understand what are the 1,000 problems that you're going to. Actually, you need to list down 1,000 line items and say what are the possible problems I could get into and how am I going to de-risk myself against each of those. And what could potentially go wrong, right? So when you look at it superficially, you think this could go wrong, but then you start going deeper. So, for example, in the fitness business, somebody could have a heart attack in the fitness center, right? How prepared are you? How are your trainers trained to handle a situation like that? And that needs a lot of rigor, training, and by God's grace, these situations don't arise. But you need to be prepared.
Absolutely.
So the more you train your people, the better you are, in any of such situations. And I think finally, the talent pool is very, very important.
Yeah.
Do not compromise on talent. A lot of us, being good human beings, try to help people out.
Yeah.
But I've realized that despite your best intentions, if you have the wrong person fitting into a role, you don't succeed.
Yeah. So, in the recruitment part, it is important not to fall into the trap of, oh, this guy needs a job, let me try and fit him in here. Because
I also realized that when you have the wrong person in the role, then it's better for them also to move to a role that they would be able to do justice to.
Yeah.
And that's where you in high performance organizations, you always have this churn of people.
Right.
But I think it's a part of the evolution. And you'd rather have a person be in a better place, doing better things that suit them more.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to have hard conversations with people around those.
True. Dharam, when you look at your journey from the young boy who was treated as the baby, well, still is,
still
in the family, to the experienced entrepreneur and the experienced person that you've become now, who would you like to give the credit to for your success?
I think firstly to both my parents, because they gave us such a balanced childhood. My father was a regimentalized, strict disciplinarian, straight talk soldier. And my mom on the other side was a very soft-spoken, and very comforting human being, right? So they gave us both sides of, I was very scared of my father, but at the same time loved my mother intensely. And that gave me a very, very well-rounded side. I think my sisters, because they've been my mentors, and a lot of credit goes to my wife, Shweta, because she was a hotelier who gave up her career to take care of the family. And I really respect that. And she's been very supportive. But from a career growth perspective, I think I spoke of Mr. Bakshi, who was my mentor. I think Ankit Nagori has been a very big influence on my life. He's much younger to me, but I've learned so much from him. And even today, when I have problems, I look up to him for solutions. And I've been fortunate to have worked with leaders like these who've helped me, grow. But I think it's also a lot of it has come from the people I've worked with, right? The teams that I've been fortunate to be part of. Like in Future Group at Central, I used to manage a mall of 400 people. But each one of those was a joy to work with, right? All of those people, I've learned so much from them as well. Right? Even in my current role, I work with a team of youngsters who I learn from every day. And I think it's a mutual respect situation, right? Where you build something together and then the bond lasts forever. So
Brilliant. So Dharam, without revealing any secrets about your future plans, what can you tell us about like how you're preparing your runway to take off again as an entrepreneur?
To be honest, it's not a thought through plan yet. It's always on your mind, and it's a bug that's always there. It's like everyone in India wants to be an actor or a cricketer, and now also an entrepreneur, given all that, the way the landscape has changed from a startup perspective. But at the same time, there are a few ideas that are always in my mind. I'm very committed to, in the long run, building something to give back to society. I think it's going to be very important to kind of, figure something out which at a non-profit level will change the world. I think the mental well-being space is one of those that I'm constantly thinking about, because when I went through 2020, I realized the importance of mental well-being over, probably physical health at that point of time. But that's one, and I keep talking about it. I keep reading, keep discussing these ideas. It's not firmed up in my mind, but it's still a few years away. And in the meanwhile, I'm very happy with what I'm doing, because again, this is an opportunity to build something from scratch. And it gives me a lot of at the end of the day, I feel very satisfied with progress that we are making, and the impact you're able to create in an organization really helps. So
I love the way you've put it, that this is your at the core, you want to be very careful about, and you want to be mindful about the impact that you're creating in the world, right? And this is the primary thing that's on your mind.
I think purpose is very, very important.
Purpose.
If your purpose is to to create meaningful experiences for people, then you have to be completely committed to it. Absolutely. And the difference comes only when you create impact. Last week I was sharing with a colleague of mine from a previous company, and he was struggling with a few things, and I was telling him, if you don't create impact, it gives a bad name to all of us. People can say, he was doing well in that company, why is he not working here? But you have to bring that impact, make the change, and then everything around you will look more positive.
I wish you all the best for the future, Dharam. How has your experience been on the Be Your Own Boss podcast?
Amazing, Sachin. I think from the time you called me, I have had such a great conversation. I started following you, started following your morning updates on the group, talking about it. And I think you really inspired me. And when you called me the first time, I was not even sure I could talk to you, because I was saying I'm not even my own boss technically. So, but this power of stories that you told me about, that for centuries people have learned from each other's stories. And if this can help anyone in any small way, I think that will be a great outcome for me personally. But just coming out here this morning, sharing the sunrise with you in a beautiful location, I think no better way to refocus and come back onto doing something that you really want to do. So thank you very much for encouraging me.
Thank you so much. And I enjoyed this conversation. It was a wonderful, very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and those nuggets of wisdom with us.
Thank you very much, Sachin. I wish you all the very best. I'll keep following your work, and I please continue doing what you're doing. I completely, I'm at a loss of words to actually express myself, which is very rare, but, but thank you very much for a great morning today.
My pleasure. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that's Dharmendra Mehta, Dharam, and you've been watching and listening to Be Your Own Boss.